All right, we're going to move on to our next presenter, Colonel Philip Evans from the U.S. Army War College Center for Strategic Leadership. And Colonel Evans is going to talk about a large-scale simulation that they run for their students every year. And one of the reasons why this is called SMART tools and not technology tools is because you don't necessarily need fancy avatars and lots of technology to run a smart, sensitive, complex simulation. So Colonel Evans will talk a little bit more about how they are running a large-scale, complex simulation with very little technology. The floor is yours.
Or at least he will when the little modicum of technology comes on. When it does come on, yeah, well, we'll launch. Yeah, I would tell you, just had a quick lunch, just flew around multiple Second Life environments. I've been there, by the way. And then I'm going to give you about 40 slides. So the theme for this afternoon is vertigo. I apologize in advance. Apparently, the Department of Defense has some sort of interrelationship with Microsoft. We probably pay by the slide. So, but I'll go quick. Okay, you know why I'm here. You read the agenda. We'll get our building. That's where I come from, at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. We'll get that entered in Second Life as quick as we can. And you can come visit, and that's what I'm going to cover this quickly. You know, this is a spectrum in DoD, and if you work from the bottom up, you know, it's how you get better munitions, how you get tanks, and all that sort of stuff. Very much mandated by law, very much budget-oriented, very rigorous in that sense. When you go further up, you know, you're into the wide open mode, and so and you've seen it demonstrated here today. This is a community of interest, not necessarily a community of practice. What I show you, by virtue of what the Army War College puts on, is not necessarily exactly what's done in the other war colleges around the country. However, we do talk, certainly community of interest. Variety of things we do. Of course, I advertised I would talk to you about our capstone exercise, the strategic decision-making exercise. We do other things. That second point is with all the other war colleges. That's a distributed effort, by the way. If you drop down to the role-playing simulation exercise, unbeknownst to a lot of you, we have a resident war college where students come in, and I'll show you the last year's class, where the students come in, they start the first week of August, they graduate in the first week of June. We also have parallel non-resident courses. So how do you run an educational exercise at distance when folks are in Tampa, in Washington, in Baghdad, in Osan? Think chatbook, or excuse me, Facebook, chat rooms, map views, and things that we distribute. So when I looked at a force more powerful, it kind of resonates. And that last piece, the strategic crisis negotiation exercise that we do either internally with our foreign students, and I'll show you where they come from, and then also at various graduate schools, kind of resonates with ICON, same sort of thing. We currently use a Nagorno-Karabakh scenario, as you can imagine, one non-state actor in the middle and 6 nations around. So again, good to be here and see how other folks prosecute this stuff. All right. On to the War College. If you look upper right, those are the 6 core courses the students undergo throughout the academic year. And you probably cannot read the little words down at the bottom, but that lower golden ring really corresponds to where folks show up as lieutenant colonels and colonels. The average infantryman has commanded a battalion of about 750 people, and however much he thinks he understands coalition, however much he thinks he understands the international community, we would tell you he doesn't. And our mission is to create that guy plus 10 years equals Petraeus, or that guy plus 14 years equals Mullen. So that's our charter. Here's a typical class. This was AY09. The class that will graduate in June of 10 is showing up right now. We do have a certain amount of civilians. Look lower left. Not enough from the Interagency. We would love to have more. They bring a lot to the environment. We are blessed there. International folks, 42 from 42 different nations. That was last year. That's all in alphabetical order. This year, I'm pleased to tell you there will be 50 from 49 different nations. We're doubling up with Pakistan. Absolutely a plus for us and a great education for the students in the rooms. Some quick simulation design considerations, and I'll get to the capstone. I'm going to build this really quick and just make a couple of points. It is good for us to work future. I like taking students out of a comfort zone. It also allows us to kind of move the deck chairs around and shape the environment the way we want to. That point in lower right about jumps, that's equal to advancing games 30 or 60 or 90 days at a time. Because as I'll show you in our capstone exercise, the students are acting as 3 stars, as 4 stars, or as the equivalents within our government, and they need to understand what occurs that far down the road based on decisions that they make. I'm going to build this very quickly. We're unclassified throughout. We used to segment the international fellows for certain portions of the exercises. We stopped doing that. Now I'm lucky, and I talk up there about more complex tasks. My average student, well, we do the stuff with the graduate students, but they're 28 years old and have usually done something somewhere. A tour with USAID or something. But my typical War College student has been in for 20 years. He's got a master's degree. He's done a variety of things. So I can get more complex. And oh, by the way, we've gone through our core courses by the time we do the capstone that I'm about to describe. Quick comment about fidelity and engagement for all you gamers or folks who are interested in gaming. Those are the 2 pieces to a game. And I learned this from a vice president at EA Sports. Fidelity is how realistic it is. It can be so realistic, however, that folks turn off. What's the ultimate example? Anybody done Microsoft Flight Simulator? Extremely realistic, which means that you apply for and prosecute a flight plan that takes you from Baltimore to Cleveland for 4 hours. You'll sit there like that. So that leads you to the second point, which is, and EA Sports gets it right. Don't worry too much about how the football player looks. The guy wants to run, So it comes down to engagement. So if something, it can be very realistic, but if it's not fulfilling enough, the student will pop out pretty quick. Okay. Now that's the exercise that was. So those are the 2009 dates. I told you we like going forward. So 6 days. 3 and 3 in 2 different semesters. We split the class. Both halves of the class, and I'll show you the wire diagram that shows you how we're organized, all start at a common start line and go their other ways. And you may ask me how that works later. And one of the reasons we do 2 semesters is so I can move students from one place to the next. When I show you the organizational chart, it'll help you out. 7 different scenarios. We think that's real world. We had 16 scenarios 4 years ago. It was so impossible for the student NSC to keep up that what did we do? We made it not only unrealistic, but we lost engagement. Students checked out. They could not handle it. We think we're probably about right. One is a domestic scenario, and everything else is on the global stage. 15 different organizations, and I'm going to bounce past this in the interest of time. Objective. We look at the capstone as a second piston stroke. Everything, and I showed you that real quick glimpse of the 6 core courses that the students have, and they do that from August to March. That's really the first piston stroke on the engine. What do you do in a classroom? You read, you talk about, you discuss, you occasionally write papers. And so what we wanted to do is the second piston stroke. So our capstone is an experiential education vehicle, and we actually review those things the students had been taught about policy making, about implementation, specifically how the military prosecutes operations either in planning or execution, and then finally how we resource our efforts worldwide. We do try to set up an environment that replicates the current uncertain environment, and we do integrate the elements of national power, which, again, if I go back to that infantry lieutenant colonel, the battalion commander, they don't necessarily harness all that or understand it. A little bit more about design criteria. You can see peace ops only a little bit on the lower half of that slide. It does come into the sway in 1.5 of my scenarios is what I'd tell you. But obviously our charter is to cover the range of operations, as you would imagine. here's the exercise structure I promised you. Hard to read, but take my word for it. Everything in the blue boxes is the students. So the interagency, the departments, or the key departments for our exercise are represented down the center. So state, the NSC, as a player, the Department of Homeland Security, the Joint Staff, OSD. If you drop down, then you get the 4 predominant military services. You drop down again, you get to the geographic combatant commands, the PACOMs, the European commands, etc. We try to stay current. Africa Command has been around about a year now in terms of the flag up, so we moved to that. One thing that will be added for AY10, I just added it in lower right, which is Cyber Command. So we try to stay up with how we think things are going to proceed. Number of students in those cells. We weight the effort, to use a military phrase. Those blue boxes across the top average about 20. The services average about 4. The geographic combatant commands average 10 or 11. Now, there is some overhead. I showed you a class number that was 336, about 340 every year. Again, cut it in half, so that's World B over there, and imagine World A. Be virtual with me. World A is over here. And what we do is take faculty and introduce them into the blue boxes. So average of 2 faculty per blue box is observer, controller, mentors. And then across the top, the actual Secretary of State, role played by our Deputy Commandant for International Affairs, an ambassador. The President is role played by one of our 3 academic department heads. And I think what I'm trying to tell you there is folks that know what they're doing are the folks that are administering the exercise. And then lower control, I won't show you the chart, but we probably have 50 different agencies that come out and represent either the international community or what we would call subordinate government organizations, joint task forces, for example, or other functional joint commands. Total numbers, 340 in the blue, probably 100 across the top, probably 150 underneath. Just recognize how we split it, policy on the top, implementation on the bottom. I told you the 2 3-day semesters, students start in one gray box and move to the other and vice versa, so they get a chance to mix it up. That's how it looks, 3 days, a weekend, 3 days, and there's the time jump. So I go from March to May 2021. Again, I want the students to come back on a Monday and see where the carrier battle group is, what decision the President made over the weekend, and how we look in our feelings toward a particular country or region. Scenarios. Yeah, I know if you're familiar with Central Command, European Command, Pacific Command, and where their regions are, that kind of gets you to closer to where we are. Type scenarios down the left side, and DIME, for those of you who don't know, diplomatic, information, military, and economic as elements of national power. You see the little underlines there, what we're trying to get across to the students. Again, that former infantry battalion commander, that there are other ways of prosecuting operations around the world that do not involve big M military. Scenario consideration. Now here's one. This is in the Western Hemisphere. I'm not pointing to a country, but there's the players. Those are the student cells, the leaders and followers that have to come together and coordinate activity and type activities underneath. And of course, we tweaked this one to involve potential migration into our own country to get the domestic folks going. So you can pick your own countries that would foment that or cause that to be. We've got all this stuff stood up. This is the normal reference that you would see in an exercise like this. Or let me say it a better way, the normal references that students who are role-playing in a particular position would want to refer to. And then we lock these folks in a closed system, but we give them an approximation of what they would see in the real place. So if you get a cable from the State Department, it really looks like a cable from the State Department. I'm going to run you through a quick set of venues that we allow to enhance the realism. Of course, IPC is the Obama administration's version of PCC, depending on where you come from. So we do those. Those are originally driven. The first time we pushed the students to do it. After that, for the remainder of the 3-day semester, the students are on their own. They pick IPCs or PCCs and deputies committee meetings when they want to. We do multinational coordination. I will do a bilateral negotiation by schedule for every international fellow. The international fellows will not, and they will role play ministers of defense, the ministers of state, not necessarily for the nation that they're from. 2 years running, we've had Israeli officers play Syrians, who thanked us later, by the way, because we forced them to think differently. Sample subjects. There's a prep here. There are 2 retired ambassadors on both sides. Prep the individual, the U.S. and the foreign guy. They go in, they're observed, they come out, they get critiqued. That's how that works. And I alluded to the fact that we did 42, and we leave gap space for those commands or those government agencies that want to set up additional bilats. Short notice interviews. We will pull folks out of their student organizations with 1 hour notice. Tell us what's going on in the world general. We did 120 of those. We run 3 camera teams simultaneously. Some of these folks will find themselves then on our strategic news network that is just pure role playing to help educate the Americans, quite frankly. And so there's at least, unseen in that photo, but about 4 or 5 members of the foreign press. We give 1 day notice for media briefings. Distinguished visitors, call them in. Normally special assistants to the president. I'm in your region. I'm at your headquarters. I'm going to report back. Tell me what it is that you're doing right now. 1 day notice for them, 45 minutes for the students to emote, 15 for the person who visited to come out of roll. We typically will take a flag rank, a general officer or equivalent civilian to visit, and that's kind of the spread as far as where we brought folks in. Ideally, I bring somebody in who has served most recently or is serving that organization right now to comport himself with the students. And that's why that note, SDME veterans equals 7. We turn those guys over quick. You can be a nice guy, you can be a really good guy, but if you're out of the mix, you're out of the mix, and no offense. But I got to find the next guy who will resonate with the students. We do video teleconferences. In the throughput, we usually bring in 1 distinguished visitor per 3-day semester per group. Likewise, each student group at the Geographic Combatant Command level will do a video teleconference with their real-life counterpart in the field. We will have telegraphed what the students are working on. The students will get to pitch their plan, and then the real-world operators and planners in that distant location will tell them what they think. And then usually all gloves are off in the last 15 minutes, and everybody can talk about what's going on. International fellows are also clued in on this deal. So it's unclassified all around. Very helpful. This is not going to come up, but I'm going to back up one. Sessions with Congress. We are extremely fortunate to have a lot of volunteers. We can only take 12 U.S. representatives who, on 4 different morning occasions, will serve as 3-person mini House Armed Services Committee panels, and the students who are alerted the day before and have to get their opening testimony in that night are on camera with those guys at a distance, VTC, from 8 to 9 in the morning. Now that's 4 of them that we do, and we'll do 4 in the afternoon because we bring up about 10 congressional staffers who also mimic the congressman in separate testimony. In many ways, they're better than the congressman because they're there and they're read in on the game. But I would say these are all pretty good. They last an hour, 45 minutes for testimony, then the curtain goes up and critique comes from the congressman for the students, and the students are allowed to ask the questions they want to. I'm not going to show you this video, but I would tell you that Deputy Secretary for Homeland Defense on the right front of the screen is actually a Navy commander, and he is under stress. The term I would use, and I'm going to copyright this, is not to overwhelm the students, it is to whelm them, okay? Get them right to here. But when he was done, we thanked him. He'd done his homework, and he actually did very well. But he was uncomfortable. Okay, how does it play out? And I got a couple slides, and we're done. This is one of the 7 scenarios, one of 2 semesters. You see 3 days, 3-day semester, truncated slightly. This is a Friday because I'm going to make a move for the students to the next place. And I have decided, if you look at the bottom, that this is going to be it's maybe going to happen, it's probably going to happen, let's plan. So that's the type of environment that this is in now. Mostly on Outlook, but stuff is bursting across to the students. It takes 3 forms. Some of it is directive. The Secretary of Defense requests something from the military component. Some of it is very good to know. You want to know what's going on in that region as you're trying to prep. Some of it is pure chaff or crap. Why? Because that's the real world. We do that on purpose. The interagency gets spun up, so IPC or PCC, and they work towards the objective. And on the right, it says, probably, because I can't even see from here, I'm just kind of going off periphery, probably brief to the principal as folks are getting ready for a deputies committee meeting. And of course, everything's going on the military side. The joint staff, imagine that here, the geographic command here, and a joint task force here, passing information, either pushing orders or passing information or response to orders as they go. Now, everything I just talked about in the previous 10 slides or so is also going on at the same time. It's an orchestrated thing. Everything across the bottom after the 6 days is done. Probably about last year it was 313 events. So it's an orchestration game. Now, 313, in reality, there were about 700 respondents, because if you call a certain type of meeting, congressional testimony, and I bring in all 4 service chiefs to testify, I'm really extending tentacles. And oh, by the way, driving coordination laterally. So kind of a complicated game in the sense of making any of these things a center of gravity to stick on, but we do what we can, and certain things are key points. And what we did this last year, and it's off your screen, we ended up culminating on a Friday and on a Wednesday with full-blown National Security Council meetings called by the President and televised back to the class. That's it. It's a good learning opportunity. It is as free play as we can make it, and it is evolving. Some of you will have good questions that'll make me think. Some of you will catch me in the hallway and it'll make me think. We are happy to shape this thing as a best educational tool. And I think I'm going to stop right there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Let's open the floor for questions. Who wants to know more information? At the back. Right behind you, actually.
Ben Shepherd from Alternative Futures. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, Ben Shepherd from Alternative Futures.
Okay, sorry.
What techniques do you use to capture and analyze the discussions and deliberations within each of the groups, considering you have so many participants?
Boy, am I glad you brought that up. Did everybody hear the question? Okay. What do we do to do data capture? Now, I guess two things I'd say. One, remember this is not an analytical game. So the great ideas that this entire, and this is a 3-level game, as you saw. I've got kind of 3 levels of folks dealing with one another. The great ideas that they come up with probably aren't going to be packaged up and sent, post haste to the Pentagon. It's okay, because this is an educational tool versus an analytical tool. But the one thing, and I'm really happy you asked the question, because I may have blown past the slide or hidden it somehow, is the culmination in each of those 30 student organizations, 15 in each world, with those observer controllers at the end of each day, is a 1-hour after-action review session. That is that opportunity for 30 discrete bodies of folks to talk about, wow, what did we just do? What are we doing now? Hey, what are we going to do? So that's actually invaluable. And the one thing that really kind of is the day 7 to the exercise is we will put the students back in their seminars. The class is 340, 20 seminars, 16 or 17 each, back in their home rooms, if you will, that they were in from August to March. We will bring them back in there, and they will do an all-day after-action review of the exercise. And that helps them sort it out. We slate the students into all the different organizations consciously so that they're not all grouped in a seminar in a cell. So they're everywhere. And when they do come back to the seminar, they can talk to all the different pieces in the mosaic. Sir?
All right. Yeah, I'm trying to get hands that we haven't heard from yet. Have you asked a question already today? Okay, right behind you then. Sorry.
Sure.
How long is your exercise day?
Good question. Yeah, it's not bad. It's 8:30 to 16:30 or 4:30 p.m. So the early comers, the students that are doing congressional testimony will be there at 7. Some folks might stay on till 6 p.m. But really the rump is 8:30 to 4:30. Yeah.
All right, and then the next question. Oh, there you go.
Ellie Bartels, I'm a master's student at MIT. When I've seen simulations run in future in the past, one of the persistent problems has been making sure everybody is on the same page with available technology and also what the starting position of all the players in the game are. How do you juggle that, since you said you intentionally jumped 15 to 20 years? Is part of the goal to have these new technologies in play, or if not, how do you try to adapt to make a realistic worldview? Yeah,
it's interesting. One of the things that we get away with, quite frankly, is every game has its own overhead. And you asked the questions of other presenters here. How much did you have to learn before you actually did this thing? We were very fortunate. In the case of the War College, I've had these folks in harness, learning about what they're going to be told they're going to be, kind of throughout the early part of the curriculum. What we're also then very sensitive to is how much is too much. At what point am I back in whelm status or overwhelmed? So we do give them a world scenario, and we used to do one that was, it was every nation represented at the UN, and said, they don't need that. Let's just go with, okay, I'm telegraphing to them, that maybe they don't need to go there. But in the end, who cares? I mean, these folks have only got a certain amount of time to be able to concentrate. So how do we pump that out? We're on a portal, Facebook kind of system throughout the college, so they get all the. When I showed you all the reference material, and some were asterisked, some of that stuff we throw out in book form, and then a good chunk of it, we throw out electronically, and then make that further available when they show up for the exercise.
Okay, final question here. Anyone who hasn't had a question today, then we'll go to the morning. We'll come next time.
Do you make significant assumptions about the way the world works? And sorry, Andrew Oken. Do you make significant assumptions about the way the world works for war and peace? And do you have groups that have managed to completely avoid armed conflict? Or do you make sure that you engage all 3 levels in the exercise?
So many answers to that question. Nobody gets it right in 2021. We used to call this strategic crisis exercise. Then we realized, crap, everybody's going to automatically assume it's a crisis. I will say this, and we've talked about this. You saw the preponderance of the student body is military, and we are trying to tell them about the other elements of power. And so what we find is military guys in military positions, the CENTCOM commander, the chairman, want to come off the gas pedal and say, I don't know. So, you go into NSC meeting and you find out that the dovish guy turns out to be the chairman. And you go, holy mackerel. So we have noticed that in the students. Now, you may say that's a great thing, but remember, and they're great people, but nobody from the State Department will ever be called on to prosecute a war. So, there's certain things we have to teach folks.
Okay, and the last question from the online group.
Okay, lots of interest online, and some nice kudos from a conflict studies professor at Wayne State in Michigan on the nice list of ways to enliven training that you have built into your exercise with the media interviews, the dignitaries, and putting the pressure on in lots of different ways. Lots of the questions were around the learning process, how you ensure that behavior can really change, particularly around how this helps the students develop the ability to think many moves ahead, and how they can incorporate learnings from failure.
First of all, they talk. I mean, they really do. I would tell you some of the greatest human failures within the exercise probably got communicated laterally through the peer group faster than you would ever imagine. You know, too many slides to show you, but I would just quote you real quick. This is a student insight. I learned to recognize what senior leaders must act on because it's most urgent and important, what they should delegate because it is urgent and less important, what they can defer but not ignore because it is important but less urgent. I mean, that's the sort of insights students pull away. So, you know, we're pretty happy with the product from that standpoint. A lot of this stuff is recorded, by the way. The only folks we don't record are the live congressmen because way back when they asked us not to do it. And they're actually good. They role play. They literally walk down and I tell the students, don't get hung up on Congressman Tauscher and she's going to be a certain way, because I can tell you coming down the hall she's going to get asked by John Shimkus, hey, be something different today. So anyway, but everything else is pretty much written down. Students can take away anything they want in terms of the product they created. I mean that's a kit bag thing for them. So.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Fantastic.